I just hope that they announce some shows that follow with the weight that this has.
What Andor has done for me is that it's reminded me how important Star Wars can be.
Yeah.
And it's reinvigorated the narrative potential and the narrative power that the movies like the original trilogy and even the prequels have. Because these are deeply political stories. Everything you do is political, whether you're aware of it or not.
Do you want to join a rebellion?
Every day I want to become more rebellious.
The fact that Andor was released by Disney, I was like, this is kind of like Frozen for boys. No, this is kind of like Frozen for rebels. Do you want to join a rebellion? Forget building a snowman. I just think Andor leaves all the right nuggets, clues, and blatant in your face speeches to tell you that fascism and oppression breed rebellion, and rebellion's dirty, but it has to be done. And I
Yeah.
love that. I love that for Star Wars.
Yeah, and like what a relevant show. You know, it's so funny that it's coming out right now, but it was written probably 2 years ago
Yeah.
when the world looked so much different. And like, do you think Disney knew what it had on its hands?
No. Well, okay. Someone at Disney knew. I wish I knew who exactly it was who gave Tony Gilroy the keys to the kingdom. Because I went to a taping with the head over at Hulu who greenlit Shogun, and he talked a lot about that. I would love to know who it was behind this and how many people were pushing and fighting for this. Because I've been watching a ton of interviews this week as the final episodes were coming out, and Stellan Skarsgård was like, these episodes were done, and this whole series was done being written for the most part before Trump ever took office. This is not a direct response to Trump term two. This is, no, first season came out 2022, second one comes out 25, and he's like, it was already being recorded by the time we knew what was happening. Okay,
This is
got
just
it.
like a bird in the hand, you know? Well, I mean,
Yeah,
what it goes to show is that fascism is just fascism
it sure
and
is.
rebellion is just rebellion, and it wears many faces over the era, over the eons, right? Whether it's the United States versus Vietnam or the people of America versus a wannabe fascist organization or even Israel Palestine stuff, that it wears different faces, but the energies are the same.
You know, I couldn't help watching this. I just kept thinking about a completely different movie in a situation that no one could relate to, in which Charlie Chaplin released The Great Dictator in
Oh, yeah.
1940. So everyone's kind of like, oh, yeah, Hitler, oh, bad guy, okay, invade Poland. 1940 is a little early for the rest of the world to get on board hating this guy and
Yeah.
trying to stop him. And instead, he condemns Hitler and a little bit of Mussolini. He talks about fascism and anti Semitism and the people that follow it and how easy it is to fall into it and then how hard it is to pull yourself out of it. He gives an amazing speech, and it is a black comedy and a satire about Hitler. Watching Andor, it's a dramatic version, but I can't help but sit there and be like, oh, if ever there was a show to be thinly veiled and talking about what's happening at the moment, it is this show.
Absolutely.
Chernobyl was, I think, maybe a few years too early, but also was right with the first Trump presidency, and we didn't really get what was going on. I like that Andor delivers it all in a Star Wars package. Nothing like TIE fighters and Nazis.
Yeah.
But what did you think of the last few episodes and how it wrapped up and this season overall?
It was good. I think probably the high point of the season for me was the last batch of episodes, which was the
Yeah.
Gorman Massacre, because they were intense and we knew what was happening, and they just did a really good job of kind of orchestrating it and choreographing it.
Mm-hmm.
Then we knew this final batch of episodes needed to essentially lead us into where we pick up with Rogue One, because this is
Yeah.
like a prequel to Rogue One. And it's so weird that, I mean, there's a way that you could look at this where it's like Tony Gilroy made 8 movies
Yeah.
that lead into Rogue One. These aren't necessarily episodes as much as they are 3-episode movies that were released weekly. And
Yep.
when you look at it like that, you're like, damn, that's impressive that like Disney even greenlit this and put the funding behind it. I think here's what's so good about Andor to me is I love the other Star Wars stuff,
Yeah.
movies, TV, or whatever, but they don't do a very good job of showing you why the Empire is bad, other than
No.
look, they're led by a Sith. He's got a red lightsaber. He has force lighting. He looks like he's a space wizard. Of course he's bad.
Yeah.
And then it's not deeper than that.
That's all we get.
That's all we get. And it's like, oh, well, they blew up a planet with a Death Star. Okay. Yeah, you're right. That does make him evil. But let me see them on the ground.
Yeah.
Let me see it on the ground. And so Andor does a really good job of taking this kind of high fantasy Star Wars and really bringing it down into the streets and seeing how does the Empire actually oppress people and like making it like put flesh on it.
The older movies, as well as some of the other properties that have come out, are way too, like you said, soft and veiled. And I mean, when George Lucas talks about, I know you sent me more videos about this with him and James Cameron, when he talks about how the OG trilogy is about America and other Western imperialists in smaller countries being oppressive and being empires. No one gets it. I mean, I remember bringing up, like, did you ever forget that Star Wars was about us in Vietnam? And they were like, no, it's not. Oh, boy.
This fucking play is about us.
You know, it's the same reason people hated the Starship Troopers movie. It's just so much of a level of like, but it's not me, right? And
Yeah.
I will say, watching the series and seeing the online discourse of, wait, yeah, this plays about us. The shock slash frustration of people is interesting because it still is so highly rated. I'll go over just the IMDb ratings. I trust
Yeah.
those more than Rotten
Rotten
Tomatoes.
Tomatoes.
But the last 5 episodes, episode 8 on, 9.8 out of 10, 9.7 out of 10, 9.6 out of 10, 9.5 out of 10, 9.7 out of 10, all with at least 6,000 reviews, but the older ones having 14, 16,000 reviews. People love this.
That's crazy high.
That's crazy high. This is no other show in history has ever done it. Now, of course, give it a couple months and wait for the bot boys to get on here and trash it, if they will. But it's just so well done.
Yeah.
It's well done in the terms of filmmaking, in the terms of writing, and the acting. And they keep the action high and the stakes high without it feeling like the Boba Fett show or boring monotony or going around in circles.
And it does a good job, especially with the character of Cyril, showing the kinds of people who get wrapped up in this are the kinds of people who are just like deeply insecure and they need the attaboys of power. But the power system doesn't care about them
Nope.
at all. It will use them and chew them up and spit them out. Like I think that's probably one of my favorite aspects of this second season was how all the characters that are just pushing the Empire forward, from Cyril to Dedra to Partagaz, they like give themselves to the Empire.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if they don't measure up, the Empire will kill them, imprison them, make them kill themselves.
Yep.
Like it is so impersonal and it just doesn't care about people. And like with Cyril, it was really tragic because at the beginning we kind of had some hope. He was like, oh wow, he's with Dedra and they're like a couple. And it's almost like we want to root for him and we can see how awful his mom is. And Dedra's like standing up for him in front of his mom. I was like, hey, that's pretty great. Like that's a really good like character moments. But then we kind of get these whispers behind the scenes where Partagaz is like, Cyril can't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, Dedra is using Cyril in a big way. That's not good. That's not cool. That's not kosher. Yeah, because I've been that guy. I've been the guy in the middle of a system where the system, I'm like, I tell myself, it's like corporations. Corporations are like, hey, we're all family here. We're just family here.
Just family.
We're just friends. But they don't care about you.
No.
The moment you're an inconvenience to them, you're fired. You're gone. That is an imperial machine tactic. And if you, dear listener, are in a system and you think they wouldn't do that to me, you're wrong. I'm going to hold your hand while I say this. You're disposable.
Yeah. They said the best time to get out of Germany back in the early 20th century was 1931. The next best time was 1933. And the next best time was 1936. It's one of those moments watching this where you sit there and you go, oh, you feel bad for Cyril in a small way because he was sold a bill of goods like so many others are.
Mm-hmm.
And then to have his commanding officers, the organization he subscribes to, break the rules that they gave him to follow dutifully is amazing to watch because you go, oh, that's right. For the grunts, it doesn't matter. It never has mattered. I think watching this and seeing Krennic, first off, Ben Mendelsohn is just amazing in this role.
Yeah.
And Krennic is a fantastic fascist leader to watch. But to watch him interrogate Dedra Miro and watch how unsympathetic and intense and then uncaring he is and just ships her off to, spoiler alert, the same prison that Andor was in last season is just poetic irony, bliss. It just goes
Yeah.
to show the duty towards an oppressive organization only promises you more oppression. It
Yeah, it
doesn't
does.
promise you much else.
No.
I also love that there's a great call out for militant and non-militant and becoming militant forces who are in the rebellion who cannot get along.
Yeah.
If you don't have strong leaders on your side, either you become oppressive with a strong leader or you get so lost you're infighting and nothing ever gets done.
Yeah, I thought that was a really good touch in that first batch of episodes where Andor's was expecting someone on what turned out to be Yavin,
Yeah.
and then he's kind of just held captive by these two batches of rebel fighters.
Yeah.
Like, what a good representation of liberal infighting.
Yep.
We're so busy policing wokeness that we'll cancel each other before we will ally ourselves with people that we might not agree with everything on. You know, like what a great demonstration of that. And then you have to remember that the rebels are called the Rebel Alliance, and it's an alliance between different factions. And they did a really good job of demonstrating that there are a number of different organizations here working towards a rebellion, and they don't all see eye to eye, especially at the end where it's clear that Luthen isn't really well liked by a lot of these people. And Saw Gerrera is kind of a wild card. People are struggling to work with him.
Yeah.
And yet these are the people that we have to scrap together to create a rebel alliance out of.
And it's sad because it's never going to be perfect.
No.
It'll never be perfect, and yet it has to succeed somehow.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me to watch the conversation around Andor and how people have really changed tune, which is fine. I'm about recognize when you're wrong and come on back.
Mhm.
But Disney is flabbergasted. You have Forbes and all these other articles out there of just like insiders from Disney who will remain anonymous talk about how blatantly surprised all of Disney top brass is that the show is doing well. Forbes says Disney's been bafflingly quiet about the success of its show because they don't understand why. Because the last one, when it first premiered, the first season of Andor, I saw some old data that was like, okay, after its release, 2.7 million unique viewers had watched the premiere. That's 2.7 million people in a country of 350 with a world of millions who have access to Disney Plus and maybe don't subscribe. Now we're looking at the new one, and hold up, the first week of May, 714.6 million minutes viewed of the show for just
Holy
season
cow.
two. And that's a lot. They wouldn't give exact data as far as number of unique viewers, but that is humongous, outpacing your dad shows on Paramount and everything else. So it's almost like the people want a gutsy show that's darker, that's going to talk about issues, than they want glib, even out of Disney and Star Wars.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, what lessons is Disney going to learn from this? You know,
Will they?
they're probably not going to learn the right one, which is because, like, let's be fair. Don't get me wrong. I like the Jedi, the Force, the lightsabers. Like, I
Yeah.
like that part of Star Wars, and I think it needs its place. You know, like, I'm really sad that the Acolyte, we didn't get more of that.
Oh yeah, that's
I'm really
great.
sad that we didn't get more of that because it was going to deal with lore, it was going to deal with history, it was going to deal with all that kind of stuff, which I love. But Star Wars was just really lacking a ground level sort of experience. I think we had it in The Mandalorian when The Mandalorian first started.
Yeah.
But then over time, The Mandalorian stopped being about this ground level stuff and it started becoming about the bigger stuff.
Yeah.
And so is it that like Tony Gilroy just had a vision and he was able to bring together all the right people to get it done? Or was it the fact that audiences really want something darker and grittier, like ground level? Or is it just that it's really well written and well put together? Like, what is it about Andor that makes it lightning in a bottle right now?
Yeah, I mean, you can't deny that the writing is great and the acting and the talents. I mean, beyond Stellan Skarsgård and Ben Mendelsohn and Diego Luna, you don't have like a ton of stars that everybody knows. When Eben Moss was in the first season, he just barely started on the bear. You know, like he wasn't
People didn't know who he
blowing
was.
up everywhere. Yeah, he wasn't cast in Fantastic Four yet.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting that it's like a lot of pasty ass British boys and girls. It's like some interesting people that I've recognized from other shows more recently. I'm like, oh, they're over here. Okay. I know Dedra Miro from an indie movie that she was in with Sebastian Stan, which was wild, but also I loved it. It's called like Mondays. Lots of sex in Greece, weird, doing
Cool.
coke. I'm like, what a great start. This is totally off base for her from that movie. So yeah, you have all these people, and even Cyril, Kyle Soller, random. You haven't seen him, at least in America, you haven't seen him in many like big productions. And yet, the writing and the vision was so clear. The story is addictive. We have episodes where we're on a farm and there's an Imperial patrol coming by, and yet you're still fully invested. Or you have our ship is downed, or this or that, and it doesn't feel as tired as so much of Star Wars or other shows seems to feel.
Yeah, I mean, I think we cannot dismiss that it is culturally relevant right now.
Yeah.
It is thinly veiled criticism about what's happening politically,
Yep.
and that's just really really relevant. And it's hard to dismiss that people are latching onto it because it reflects their current moment. Not that I don't know, our administration is disappearing people.
Yeah.
It is like doing, it's very corrupt and, financially corrupt and democratically corrupt and denying human rights and all this kind of stuff. So, I mean, those things are very real. They haven't rolled out the death, you know.
Not quite yet.
I mean, I wouldn't say never say never, but I would say our bumbling wannabe fascists are probably not skilled enough to do that. They might be skilled enough to drop a never mind anyways. It feels culturally relevant is all. And I think that is a huge reason why this thing is lightning in the bottle right now.
Is it too much to make a joke about the Qataris offering us a new Air Force One like it's a new Star Destroyer? I don't know. Good
Can you
Lord.
believe like it's in your face and it is just getting more in your face.
It's which is why you know what? When the show was blunt and blatant, it was great. Because you're
Yeah.
like, oh, maybe in 2013 I would have been like, that's a bit much. Maybe in 2017 I would have been like, that's a bit much. Yeah, now it's like, oh wait, actually, perhaps this is a lot more relevant, like you're saying, and in your face of we're murdering people or shoot anything that moves. The episode we're still in Skarsgård is young, the flashback, and he's on that planet, part of an Imperial ground force. Listening to the radio is horrifying. And with
Mhm.
us and TikTok, I've seen so much from Gaza and Ukraine and elsewhere. Like, I wish there was the filter again. I didn't want to see all this. And now it's forced upon us to know about the atrocities and everything else going on right now.
Yeah. No, it's just taking a big sigh.
The last time around, there were a lot of Substack articles and posts about how Star Wars had to address Andor's low viewership numbers. In fact, like one guy on Dennegeek, John Cedra, was like, are enough people actually watching Andor to declare it a Star Wars success? And goes to the numbers, and he's like, I was surprised they even put that much money into it. Andor feels like an optional entry to casual fans when compared to Obi-Wan Kenobi or the Book of Boba Fett.
Oh my gosh, dude.
You know what I mean? Like the staying power of Andor versus these other shows proves it's not just nostalgia bait, which I think Bob Iger, Dave Filoni, maybe even Jon Favreau and others are getting caught up in. I'm just like, if we bring back things we can wink and nod at you at, you're going to keep watching. We prefer less of that and more on story, which I think Acolyte did a good enough job out of. There's a good story. There's your wink and nod to something bigger coming. Okay, that's the one moment it's there. Move on.
Yeah, I mean, Tony Gilroy went out of his way to not do cameos, not
Yeah,
do lightsabers, not do force stuff. There was a little bit of a touch with the force healer that I thought
love
was
that.
a good touch.
Yeah.
But like, I saw an interview with him where he was like, the pizza that I am here to deliver is that this is a Star Wars thing where you don't need to know anything about Star Wars to like, you don't even have to like Star Wars to like this. This is basically about a rebellion in space that happens to also be a Star Wars story.
Yeah, he specifically said when he talked to those involved with the story and the production and what they wanted to have happen, they were like, it's been years since episode 3. There's a humongous galaxy out there. Most of these people have never seen a Jedi, they've never seen a lightsaber, they've never heard of the Force other than whispers and wills, and that's how we need to keep this. This is for us, the Knights Templar. You know what I mean? Who knows about
Mhm.
the Knights Templar unless you've read Dan Brown or watched National Treasure, and even then that's a bastardized version. Who knows
Yeah.
about Gnostics or whatever else. All these like little hidden things. That's what the Jedi should be to these people. So I'm thinking through the entire thing. I don't think we hear the word Jedi in the entire Andor,
No.
and we don't see Vader. I think a lot of people were hoping that maybe Vader would show up and choke out Miro. No, we don't see any of that. Krennic is doing his thing as a political imperial fascist. That's the big evil right now. Okay, that's what we're worried about. We're not worried about someone with the Force. And I do appreciate that you don't have to have mystical stakes in Star Wars or whatever storyline. It can just be what we're facing today and have always faced as humans of people taking power for the wrong reasons and oppressing others. That's it.
And I think it makes it better.
It does.
Not just story wise, it makes it better, but it also makes Darth Vader and Palpatine more imposing because
Okay.
they're like these mysterious people in the shadows. And, season two name drops Palpatine a couple times. And the way that they name drop him is like, it makes him, you're like, oh, right. He's running this thing. He's the one making the choices about how to build this Death Star
Yeah.
and to lie to people about a mining operation or about whatever Kyber they're.
Kyber crystals.
Yeah, they name drop Palpatine in just the right ways. We don't need to see Palpatine to be afraid of him.
Partagaz talking to Krennic when they're discussing the Death Star openly. We finally hear the words the Death Star on the show. And Partagaz goes, Krennic, save your stories for Palpatine. Save your apologies for Palpatine. I don't need to hear this. That's between you and him. How could we have kept this a secret for all 10 years? That's on you. And it's wonderful to be like, oh, it's the big bad boss that we don't have to see to know that we're all scared of him.
Yeah.
Got it. We can't go back in time. We can't change how things are done. But there are definitely some frustrations and takeaways that I have, and you probably have as well. One, I wish we would have had this before we had prequels or otherwise. I don't know how it would have fit in. I don't know if the world would have been ready for that kind of Star Wars. But I wish they'd focused on this around Rogue One time more and done more like this. Seen the success of it and move forward. The other thing, the sequel trilogy is a slap in the face when you know that they completely beat the fascists, the rebels will win at the end of Return of the Jedi, and somehow Palpatine returns. Somehow we fall back into fascism. But at the same time, I can recognize that is how it goes sometimes.
I mean, one of my favorite like pushbacks that I saw on the first batch of episodes, you get Bix, who's Adria Arjuno's character. You know, I think I texted you about this. I was like,
Oh, yeah.
sexual assault has not been in Star Wars yet. So it was a big deal that it was shown that her character Bix there was a rape attempt on screen against her
Yeah.
by this Imperial guy. And this is what happens. This is what happens when you get insecure men wielding power and they wield it irresponsibly and they just lord it over people and they use it to try and get their way. Like, the movie Fury, really good because it showed that, yeah, when American soldiers were in Europe, they perpetuated a
They're
lot of the
rough.
same shit onto Europeans that it was not as clean as we thought it was.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite bits of like online hate that I saw it was like, there's no way that Darth Vader would have tolerated sexual assault culture in the Imperial troops. I'm just like, are you shitting me? Do you understand the nature of the red lightsaber, that he's evil?
Yeah.
He's not a good guy who's being evil. He's evil.
Mm-hmm.
They're not policing. Like, they have no desire to police their people on the ground.
Yeah.
Or else it'd be policed. Like,
An oppressive force doesn't need to be so well policed on matters of morality.
no. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, in what universe would Darth Vader? It's not this universe, and it's not that universe. Like, you have deceived yourself on the nature of evil, especially in the nature of Darth Vader. Like, just because he throws Palpatine into the pit at the end doesn't mean that he was a good guy.
Yeah.
He was still Lord Vader over the fascist empire. Like, he didn't care that his troops were carrying out sexual assault.
It's interesting because having watched the prequels after the sequels, I think a lot of people were like, oh, but it's little Annie, little pod racer Annie. Two things can be true at the same time. He could have been a good kid and also been corrupted and can have a moment of redemptive murder, redemptive salvation, but it's not like it's suddenly made him good. It's that moment that I realized, why did Luke burn Vader's body alone on Endor? Because no rebel would want to stand there and cool with it. He
Yeah.
paraded around. It's the realization that yes, there was good in him, but he was evil. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, if the Obi-Wan series did anything good, it was that Darth Vader was able to be like, Anakin is dead. I'm what remains.
Yeah.
That goodness is gone. I'm what remains right now. And in the Ahsoka show and stuff, like we certainly get some like maybe there's some post-mortality redemption going on. But like let's not deceive ourselves about the nature of evil at the height of the Empire's power.
Yeah. People are not going to like this for a lot of reasons. There seems to be like a little weird moral graying of what has been perceived as evil in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's just your opinion, man. The amount of comments about how woke it was that our heroes were illegal immigrants on the planet in the first couple episodes, or that, like you said, you know what, the Death Star is probably just a peacekeeping tool. Like, why would we care about that being built?
You never fire it.
Carry a big stick. That's the whole point of safety, isn't it? The peace and prosperity has been brought to our galaxy. For those who have never got that Star Wars is inherently political, especially the prequels, I don't know what you've been watching if you didn't think Andor was not be progressive and about rebellion against an oppressive empire. I hope we get some more stories that at least have some meaning and heart to them like this. I know they're not going to make another Andor. Obviously, that's done. We have Rogue One. I just hope that they announce some shows that follow with the weight that this has instead of chips in space,
Yeah.
motorcycle cops and Rogue Squadron. I don't know. It'd be
I
nice to
mean,
have something else like this.
what Andor has done for me is that it's reminded me how important Star Wars can be.
Yeah.
And it's reinvigorated the narrative potential and the narrative power that the movies like the original trilogy and even the prequels have.
Yeah.
Because these are deeply political stories. And if you're an audience, you're just like, oh my gosh, why is it political? Well, newsflash, everything is political. Everything you do is political, whether you're aware of it or not. And every story is political. And Andor has like reinvigorated the Star Wars as like what a relevant story for our times. And it makes me want to go and watch these movies again. I'm just like,
Yeah.
I'm so excited to watch Rogue One again. I'm gonna do it tonight.
Oh, same. Yeah.
I'm gonna do it very loud, all the lights off, and I'm just gonna like my hands on my knees. I'm just gonna be stoked about it.
Can we talk about that final ending scene and spoil it if people have not watched it yet?
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. I thought the show was over. Andor's got his jacket on. He's walking through Yavin. They've flown the U-Wing. K2SO is his buddy and saves him. Also, such badass scenes with K2SO.
Mm-hmm.
But then we see Bix on the wheat planet, and she's holding a baby. And it only makes it more of an emotional touch point, and why we have to watch Rogue One tonight. Because then you realize what he was sacrificing in Rogue One, and it just adds such a depth
I
to
don't
the
know.
story.
I think he knew about it.
You don't think he knew about it?
No, I don't. I think that's what Bix, that's why she left. She knew that she was pregnant. And she knew that if Andor knew that she was pregnant, he would be done immediately. He would walk away and the rebellion would suffer because of it. Andor did not know that he was a dad in Rogue One.
I guess he knew Bix was not there, but you're right. He would not have known he's a dad. All the more impactful for us that now we know this kid's growing up without a father because of rebellion.
Yeah.
It's difficult because we haven't had a good rebellion in the West in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't had a good rebellion fighting against oppressive forces and seeing something like this. And so watching this, it really takes you out of it for a second.
Yeah.
The stakes and the sacrifice required when Andor is drinking alongside Mon Mothma's cousin, Vel Sar, and they're drinking not just a Luthen, but they start naming off everyone from the past 2 seasons. It got me a little emotional. That's everybody that they've lost. I love that it has a little emotional touch point to end this one that just takes you right into Rogue One, ready to be invested.
Which honestly, Rogue One is just, it's an amazing movie. Maybe we'll do an episode on Rogue One after we watched it.
My last question. Do you think that our boy Partagaz was listening to that speech about rebellions and feeling wistful or feeling angry?
Yeah, I've seen a lot about that online discourse about it, where like they're like, oh, he was a rebel in the making. So people are like, no, he was a bad guy through and through, and he was listening to the thing that he couldn't suppress. And I'm like, no, he was listening to the thing that he couldn't suppress. It was like, this is the message that got me killed.
I think a lot of people who, again, want to sympathize with the oppressors, we'll sit here and go, ah, yeah, he seems to get a little moved by it. No, he seems
No.
to be so frustrated by it. He's frustrated through and through, and he's angry the entire show that he can't control everything and that he has to answer to somebody else. And we have to be so careful and take people at their word
Yeah.
because if someone wants to oppress, it takes a lot
Yeah.
to move between those sides.
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole conversation to be had, and I'm not the one smart enough to have it about how to rebel, how to stand up to power. Is there a right way to do it? Is there a wrong way to do it? Is there a way to do it where you just become the reverse image and you become an oppressor in a sort of way? Maybe that's what I want to see out of Star Wars universe next is like, how do you rebuild?
It'd be a boring show, but I would love at least a little taste.
I'll give maybe one lightsaber as a treat.
Let's wrap it up there. Andor season 2, finish up the finale, go watch Rogue One, all on Disney Plus.